Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this November 18th equity meeting. We'll start with approval of our meeting minutes from October 15th. Any questions, comments? Motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion been made? Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposers? Ayes have it. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with our Diversity and Equity Officer report, Dr. Chapman.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Alexander. I'm going to defer for 3.01 on DEI Advisory Committee to Wilma Alexander, if that's okay with you.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, good evening, everyone. In your package, you have information pertaining to our advisory committee, a list of about 37 committee members, staff from all departments and across the system that actually come and support the work that we're doing through their various roles and responsibilities. This is an example of how equity is threaded throughout our district, that is actually incorporated in ways that impact and inform policies, practices, processes, and a lot of the decisions and other things. So the first meeting of the year actually took place on October 24th, and we have included the agenda from that date for your information, and there are examples of the work that is taking place that's in that packet as well. We focused on the completion of an equity lens, a tool for examining the work that we do and how we review of how the Equity Committee and Racial Equity Board policies and updating our DEI priorities for the final year of our 3-year plan. So if you have any questions, just take a look at that agenda, and you can see the list of the people that are actually a part of that committee.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions for Ms. Alexander? Okay. If not, we'll move to our next item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alexander. I would like to draw your attention to the copy of the DEI Advisory Committee 3-year priorities, 2022 through 2025. We've provided updates and notations for the status of the work that you will see listed there. You will also recognize that there are 4 major areas that were selected by our DEI Advisory Committee in 2022, and I've talked about comprehensive education equity in the past, and what you see here represents the 4 major areas that the team, our DEI Advisory Committee, decided to focus on for 2022 through 2025, and they are on the left side in the colored columns: culturally responsive professional practices, 2, school climate, 3, our human capital management, retention and recruitment strategies, and 4, our resource equity. And so what you see there are strategies around each of those 4 areas, how they align to the blueprint for excellence, the evidence that we use to identify that work is actually taking place, the status of that work, and the persons who are responsible for those strategies. And so if you ever want to wonder, what does Dr. Chapman do? And her sidekick, this would be what I focus on in terms of how we make connections across the district in every way possible, across divisions, departments, as well as individuals. So with that said, if you have questions about these, I'd be happy to answer them, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the resource equity, Dr. Chapman, the number 3 about the audit the master schedule.
Yeah.
And around effective class sizes. And can you tell me how do I want to say this? Because the power to make change with this, the power that's needed. Because I've heard this master schedule conversation come up often. Also, class sizes. When I first became a board member, some teachers that I met, some wonderful teachers, had some concerns about some things that was happening when some cuts start happening. So tell me, what's the power source that's going to make those things happen, or what will be needed if it's something from this board that will need to help anchor and support that?
Thank you for asking that, if I may. One of the reasons you see it highlighted is because those are the types of questions that we're asking in our work group about what would this look like if this occurred. How can it happen? And we know there is more to it than just this needs to happen. We know it's important, so let's do it. There may be some things that are contractual. There may be some things that we need to run through our administrative team. And so we have not indicated what the status of that work is and even who might be responsible for it. And just to give you some context, so when our group of 37 individuals across the district come together, we have in that space among those team members administrators, classroom teachers, instructional coaches, folks who deal with climate in their various roles. And so they bring a lens to that committee that speaks to some of the things that could be impacting the way we support our students during the school day. And so that auditing the master schedule didn't come from us. It actually came from the members of our advisory committee for consideration by the district as to what could be done to ensure that we have good class sizes that represent how we support our students and eliminate barriers that may be creating some access issues for some of our buildings. So we have work to do in that area, which is why it is highlighted. We just don't know what that work might need to be today.
If we have facts to know that there's some barriers, we don't have to dig too deep for that. I think it's a bold goal. I think it's a good goal. I just wonder the action steps behind the implementation of what's needed. Mm-hmm. Like what can loose our hands to do that when we deal with some contractual things, and that's okay, Mm-hmm. They say good trouble. In some cases, we look at things you got to shake and get uncomfortable. But I just thought I'd ask that question because I know this is things that lurk. Thank you, Dr. Chapman and Ms. Alexander.
Reverend Harrison.
Dr. Chapman, when we're looking at the status, one of the frustrating things for me is to find information as to where things are. So when we're looking at the status just in general, when I see implementing in progress, completed, or on hold, how do we gauge where we are in that process? If one of these items, let's say strategy, I'm looking at number 1 where it says implementing or in progress. The in progress would be a better example. How do we gauge where in the process are we at? Are we moving? Are we stuck? Are we not? How do we gauge that?
Yeah, thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair, Member Harrison, Reverend Harrison, one of the things we do is to cycle back in our inquiry about the status. Now, what you won't see on the handout is the hyperlinked documents that take us to actual plan, actual work. The status of those items would be identified within those evidence markers. And so getting on a regular schedule with everyone listed as responsible, to cycle back to roll back to where are we? What are we missing? What are the gaps? What resources might be required? That is what it takes in order that we get to not only completion, but ongoing monitoring and coming back to say, well, this didn't work so well. What do we need to do better? And so I might even suggest at some point that we have each of these persons listed here come to committee, if it is so desired, to provide an update and a status on the work that they're doing.
Okay. Madam Hall?
Thank you. Just a quick question. I like colors, especially on the spreadsheet. So the yellow and then the gray, does that mean that you guys are working on that right now, or what does the color mean? Because on like the first page and the last page, you have highlighted in yellow.
And so the yellow also means that there are some things that we're doing, but some more questions around that work that need to occur. Training is ongoing and never ending, and so we're constantly adding to the training tracking form to determine who we're serving, how many people have we accessed throughout the course of the year. I don't recall what the gray means. I don't really know offhand what the gray means. I do notice that there are some things that say in progress in those two gray areas around school climate. And so it could also be that we need to cycle back to some folks that are responsible for that work. But for me, this priority tracking form represents a way of capturing all that has occurred over the past 2 years, going into year 3, 2025, and then putting names to the work as well as evidence of what has happened. We didn't have it all in one place. It landed with those folks and lived with those folks. And so now we're having these cross-departmental conversations about, no, let's pull the equity work out of this and determine how we're impacting students. What more do we need to know? How is it working across different student groups? What are our targets? And so lots and lots of conversations about this work. But I need it for you to see all of it in one place.
Anybody else have any questions that want to ask Dr. Chapman? I do have one question then. How receptive are the staff, teachers and all, in reference to this work? Because this is very important work, especially when you drill down to getting to where it's going to affect the students. And so I think it's very important. But I would like to know where they stand. Are they okay with it or not? Or
And it's probably different depending on who you speak with, because the ownership of the work is listed as those persons responsible. I can't answer it for every single program here. We're at different stages of the work across the district. And where we have in progress, you know, those are things that we've started, and they are not yet where we would want them to be. And so there's more that needs to be done. And some of the challenges might be around capacity. Some of the challenges might be around, you know, people being willing to take part in this kind of work and to use it in their various roles and responsibilities. But the status is indicative of where we are right now. Yeah.
okay, thank you. Dr. Molnar?
Thank you. And also thank you for this very, very detailed document. You know, as someone who frequently asks for information, this is information, so I appreciate this a lot. And I I also want to acknowledge, as we're discussing in the status here, you mentioned, in progress is something that you're working on, but it doesn't feel, complete yet. Implementing is something that is happening, but I feel like so much of this work will never be complete, right? If we do it right, then we will keep evolving, keep improving, keep adding. And so I wonder if there is perhaps an opportunity to create another status, like established or something like that, because I don't want someone who might be a community member who might be unfamiliar with the work of this committee and the work of your team to say nothing's finished because I don't want to give the intention that it should be finished or we expect to be finished. It's not something that you just check off. But I want to appreciate this and throw out that challenge, I suppose.
Yeah. Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Molnar. I think not just another column that would give us a different type of status level, but updates, right? Regular, reoccurring updates on this work. And then a lot of what you see here probably requires some evaluation of some kind to determine whether it's, qualitative evaluations or something that really looks at impact on students' academics, attendance, behavior. And so there's a lot of work in between the lines here. But yeah, thank you for that. I agree. We need to somehow figure out how to continue to monitor. How do we track ongoing, continuous, never-ending work?
Good job. Any other questions for Dr. Chapman before we move on to the next point? Madam Jackson.
Okay, so just for clarity, because what I was understanding that Dr. Chapman said earlier, but now I'm questioning my understanding, was that where the status column, that if we were looking at this soft on like if we were in Excel, or if we had this in an email, we could click and we would see documents that would give us
an idea of what the plans
what the
are.
plan is and possibly where we're at. Am I correct in my understanding?
Yes.
Okay, because that's what I was going to, because then I got unclear when you both started talking. But okay, because then we can measure and it can be extrapolated per cluster almost, like different buildings, could it be, of where implementation is happening and then what the outcomes what the outcomes are in those specific clusters where the work is moving along fairly easier than in certain other areas, and then that we can use that data to inform some other things, possibly.
I want to be thoughtful in my response. So, not all evidence is equal across all of the strategies that are listed here. And because they are all in different places in their implementation and efforts and development, we may not see all of the same types of information across all of the strategies. So, to your point, when we look at comprehensive evaluations of this kind of work, it could be that at some point in time, another next level area of work would be, what does an evaluation of the 4 categories of DEI priorities identified for the 3-year plan look like? And how we take all of these strategies and the evidence therein and create some metrics that would apply to them together, collectively. You see what I'm saying? So you're not going to see the same information across all of the strategies and the accompanying evidence within. And I am going to email the document so you can see the hyperlinks for yourself. But that's a good problem to have because I'm a researcher first. And I like the idea of well, what actually happened because we created all of these DEI priorities?
Because that's the question.
That's the question.
Like, what's really happening?
Yeah.
Because that is not just buzzwords.
Yeah.
Because I'm just sick of buzzwords.
Yeah.
DEI, restorative circle. What does that mean? What does it look
Yeah.
like? What's the output?
Yeah.
You know? So when I plant a seed, I want to see fruit.
Yeah.
Or whatever the seed is, it needs to grow, right? And produces something. So I'm just curious on what is being produced. And because I understand this is all new work and, turning the ground over, right? And seeds are being planted, so it's going to be some time just taken. And I'm just trying to see some stuff, I put in a spider plant, it's growing in a week. Some stuff can take root quick. Other things is going to take a little time before it blooms, and I do understand that. But I think, Dr. Chapman, you've already addressed it, so I'm not going to belabor it, that updates and report outs, I'm just curious on things. It's a journey. I'm clearly seeing that it's a journey. And if there is any resistance along the journey, then that is going to hinder progress in certain areas. And I'm just saying the transparency of reporting out is what I'm asking about. Like, what did we have resistance in this area because of this? Is the type of information I want to know. This area, what I'm saying about comparisons, like this group effectively working together as a team, I don't know, am I overstepping with this questioning? Is this something that would not happen? Because I'm curious that with these things that we're putting in place to, again, empower our district, elevate our children, support our children, the growth and the learning, and also supporting teachers, right? That we're ensuring this happens and that we can call it what it is when it's not happening. And then, deal with it however we bet. So just so you know, that's only where my question is around, because as Dr. Molnar said, I think it's great work. I just like to be able to measure and say, okay, this is working because of this, or this is not working, not because it's not good work, not because it's not a good plan in place. This is what's stopping the work, because I can see the narrative being, oh, this is not working. Because in education, that's what we do. Is, oh, this is not working, then we want to throw it out. But I want to know, this is not working because this, and this is how we're proving this.
Yeah, I can even see to, if I may, Mr. Chair, I can even see to Dr. Molnar's point that we even start to look at the metrics within each of these evidentiary pieces. So we used to, years ago, have something that helped us to track equity data. And by equity data, we tracked and looked at academic performance, attendance, behavior, community demographics, free and reduced lunch rates across a community or a school. And we were able to identify how buildings, staff, community interacted with the various types of work happening. And that way it gave us a snapshot so we could filter by school, by community, by grade level to see whether our school climate initiatives in that building were making a difference. Do you get what I'm saying? So I that's where I am going as it relates to evaluation of this work as we go into year 3 now, because year 2 was, what do we need to be doing? What should we think about? How do we communicate our work to others across the district? This is where we got to. Year 3, it was, let's get some things started, put some things in place, identify what types of programs, services, supports we could incorporate into these strategies. And now year 3, evaluation, metrics, monitoring, outcomes, outputs. So I agree 100%. I hope I'm making sense.
We're going to go with Ms. Hall, and then we'll go with Reverend Harrison and Dr. Molnar.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. You're a 3-man show, right? And for you to be able to identify all of these needs in less than 3 years, and each one has an action in the status that something is being done, implemented, completed, in progress. This is huge. Some companies can't even do this with 100 people on the staff. So I just want to say thank you for your leadership and for listening to not only to the staff, but to the children. Just thank you. And I just say job well done. And, we don't want to create more work and anything like that, but as you stated, you can have each person responsible for each group come and speak to our committee, and they can give us more in depth of a breakdown of how they've been doing their research and take some of the weight off of you and your team because you've put people in place to do the work. So I would, Chair, like to ask, these next couple months, even going into next year, not saying like boom, 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 but having Dr. Chapman and her team, have some of these people that's responsible for these different categories to come and speak to us. And it's 4 different categories, and we can focus on one category at a time. That way we can get all of those questions answered in more depth.
And I agree with that. Was going to be one of my comments after everyone got done.
Well, I took it.
I think that I think it's good because now they can come, they can speak to us, tell us what's going on. They can say where they're having resistance and so forth, where they're having problems at, and why. And if they're having problems, who are they having problems with? So we can get down to the business of making sure the work gets done for our students. Reverend Harrison, I'm sorry.
I have a lot of questions about Miller South, so I'll forgo this and let Dr. Molnar have it.
Dr. Molnar.
Thank you, and I'll try to be quick. I just wanted to say the ongoing monitoring is important. It's necessary. It's a lot of work, and you've already done a lot of work, and so I kind of wanted to, even more. Speaking of more work, it's just looking at the status column. I think there's an opportunity here, and what I was trying to say before too, and maybe I didn't say it very well, but an opportunity here just in messaging, just to remind people that this work is never done. This work should be never done. We will always think of a way to be better, to serve our students better, to serve our community better. And it's really, really satisfying to look at the green word that says completed. It is very satisfying to see that. However, I wonder if there's an opportunity for messaging to just even identify or easier identify the objects that don't hold your breath. This will not be completed because it's so important, because we will keep working on it. And if you look at a document like this and you see status of all completed, be skeptical because it should be continued work. So it should be ongoing. So I not only want to create more ongoing work for you, but before you dig into that, there we go.
Okay, Reverend Harris, did you want to go ahead and, okay. All right, so any other questions we have on this topic right now? If not, we'll move to 3.03.
Just one point I wanted to bring to your attention. We are beginning the process in our district, which will likely go on the spreadsheet somewhere. We are beginning the process of our local equitable access plan, which comes from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. And so we just received notice that it is time for us to create our plan around our local equitable access items. And you'll see that what we look at as far as that LEAP, Local Equitable Access Plan, are the 6 bullets that you see on that page 2 of this handout. And they are inexperienced teachers, not yet effective teachers, out of field courses, frequently absent teachers, inexperienced principals, courses with advanced curriculum. And this is broken down for our district by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, by building and by district. And then our team will be required to develop a plan. And by team, I mean our Human Capital Office, our School Improvement Office leads this work. Our Equity Division, our Treasurer's Office may need to be a part of this discussion. Our teaching and learning division, principals, teachers. And so our planning committee will review our district's data, and then we'll use the Odoo tool that they've provided for us to develop our district's plan. So that may be something we come back to you with, that plan that will have been submitted as to the work plan to address those data points. That's all on that.
Oh, we like that. I like that. I got me excited. Reverend Harrison.
Mr. Chair, the Akron Public Schools had a data equity dashboard. Mr. Harrington would allow us to, he would show us different things, community members, he would show us different questions. Do we still have that dashboard?
No, the equity data dashboard doesn't exist to date because we migrated to a new data system that doesn't allow for the capability of that dashboard. But we are still asking for some opportunity to develop that in a new way, and that request is known and has been made.
What is the how many resources will it take to create that? That was a pretty extensive dashboard. So what will it take to recreate that?
Well, it's the work of a data analyst, a programmer, someone like my daughter who develops equity data dashboards, but it is both technical as well as content driven around particular areas of student achievement, staff data, so there's a human capital component to that. Many people have to come around the table to ensure that that dashboard is created as it once was.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we would look into that, because that was a complete system that allowed for measuring across the board so many different, when we say equity dashboard, we may think about just a human side of that, but we could track finances. Are we really getting what we, is this doing what it's designed to do? The money, is this well spent, or should it be spent here? So I would move that we would look back at that equity dashboard that we had. It was pretty extensive, and I'm not sure what it takes to create, but I think that would do the district, that would serve the district well. Okay,
well noted. I made a note of that so we can inquire about what we need to do to make that happen. Dr. Molnar.
I was just going to say, when I was at OSBA earlier this week, I believe there was a vendor that had a product similar to that. So I'm wondering if some products might exist that could be reviewed also. And it might be, yes, sorry, no.
Well, I could speak to what we used to use. It was called Tableau, and it became very expensive to continue to use it in the district because the state had mandated that we switch over to what the state was using so that all districts would be the same. All the information would come in the same way. But Tableau was what we used, and that's what that data was created from that Reverend Harrison is speaking to.
Okay. Madam Hall, and then Madam Vice Chair.
When I was at the CUBE conference, there was an organization, I have their business card, I just got to, finish unpacking. But they talked about having money, free money, available to equity, and it was lots of money. And they do it in Youngstown, and, well, I'm sorry, the gentleman was from Youngstown, but they do it in New Jersey. And they have all of this funding that they want to get with different schools to help implement things. And maybe this could be something that could be implemented that wouldn't cost us a dime, and I'll connect you guys with that person I met with.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, so this here, if I'm understanding this document is the state saying we have a tool and as I turn the second page, that we can put information, they focus on which group of students are at a disadvantage when it comes to access to quality teachers. So the state is providing us something that we can put, these are key indicators for school success, graduation rates, attendance rates, so many things in this. So I want to see how this tool working. Because, the kids say life be life and data be data. And so if we put this in, it's going to tell a story. And if it's something that the state already provides, Mr. Chair, at some point, as I serve as a guest to your here meeting, I would love to see what the story that this data tells, because I know that I mentioned before that if we look through clusters, that I think that the movement of each cluster will tell a story. And if I see a student that starts as a kindergarten in one cluster and goes all the way through that cluster, and that if a majority of those kids are graduating at or above grade level, proficient or advanced in that cluster, then I think that's speaking something to where we talk about on this here other page, when it says the quality of the teachers, inexperienced teachers, like what teachers go to what buildings, and how is that determination made, that if we then look at another cluster, and if students starts from kindergarten and go throughout, and they're behind, then I think that gives us a clear picture of some action steps that we could take that the data would support. So that's why I'm just curious on to what that would look like. And I'm so thankful to the state of Ohio for having such a tool, because we have free access to this tool, right? All we need is the info, is what I'm understanding. Yes, Dr. Chapman.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, the local equity access data comes to us. The tool is populated with our district's data on these indicators. And then it is the district's responsibility through our school improvement office and the other divisions that will be working to create the response to where our district is, given those indicators. So it's already populated with each of our schools as well as our district's rankings on those particular items. We have to address them in terms of how we are going to remediate and mitigate.
So that's something that we could view. I would like to view that.
Okay.
One thing I love about, I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say?
I'm sorry, I was just letting her know that what she wants to view is already at the state levels in the data.
Okay. What I was going to say, one thing I like about our board is we all have some of the same desires. And Carla, you hit it right on the nail when you stated this tool, right, and how we can look at each cluster and different areas. Because I've said it before, if kids start at kindergarten at one school and they're at that same school till 4th grade, why are they not at the level they need to be when it's 3rd grade or 4th grade? Like, how are we missing the beat for some of our kids that can't read or not at the 3rd grade level? So by this tool, by you having this, Dr. Chapman, I think builds volume. As Dr. Jackson said, we can really look and dive into these clusters. And if they need more help, we need to be able to push more help to those clusters to get these kids where they need to be. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
And just
Dr. Chapman.
again, a point of clarification, when we are analyzing our equitable data around those factors on that second sheet, they ask that the district team go through a root cause analysis. And so what we might think impacts student learning or achievement may actually be something different in terms of attendance or absence or of a teacher absence, or if you are brand new to the district, you're probably not yet effective because you're brand new. And so the root cause analysis really allows us to dig into what are we actually seeing. So you don't just look at the numbers and go, oh, this is this and this is this, because this cluster has this. We really got to dig deeper below the surface at what is actually going on.
And just one more thing.
Yeah.
At that conference, they talked about, if teachers are not in their right state of mind and things are not going well with them, it's going to reflect in the classrooms. So how do we build up our teachers and make sure that they have what they need, such as maybe financial literacy and things like that we're giving to our children? Some of our teachers may need help with that, counseling, therapy, all of that, so they can bring their best selves to the classroom to be able to project that off on our children.
Okay. It sounds like maybe we could also do maybe a comparison and contrast, maybe a sample, maybe at one of the meetings as we move on to show everyone how it kind of works and what we're doing. So, I mean, we have time, but I want to just throw that out there. All right. If we're done with this section, now we're going to circle the wagons and go back to Mr. Keenan, if that's okay, Dr. Chapman. All right, Mr. Keenan, you're up. Bless you, yes.
So, good evening. I apologize for being a little behind schedule this evening, so I wasn't here right at the start of things. So I'm here to give some updates on the Kenmore build and some of the things going on there, as well as some other construction projects going on throughout the district. If anyone has had a chance to read the handout that describes some of the things I'm going to talk about, then please ignore my talking or descriptions of, but I'll go over a little bit of what each of these things are. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. So the first thing to talk about for the Kenmore build is the owner's representative, which is an organization, firm, or individual that is hired to represent the interests of the district over a project and help oversee its execution. They're sometimes known as an owner's agent. And OR's responsibilities include project oversight, monitoring projects' progress, schedules, and documentation. This includes monitoring project budget, evaluating change orders, identifying cost-saving opportunities, identifying potential risks and how to mitigate them, and ensuring accountability and that all project team members are working towards the owner's goals and objectives. Some other notable points about an owner's representatives is that they are involved in all phases of a project from inception to completion. They can help the owner make informed decisions to reduce risk, streamline efficiencies, and drive collaboration between the owner, in this case us, and those that are working or contracted to build the new schools in Kenmore for this situation. Typically, in years past, as we rebuilt a lot of our schools, this stuff was done in-house. We had a lot of more people in facilities in the administration of. We had an architect on staff, as well as engineers and related positions. And over the years, through retirements and resignations, those positions have not been filled. And we're to the point now, staffing-wise, to have the need to hire an owner's representative during a large construction project such as this one. The public bid for the RFP for the owner's representative closed on November 4th. The top 3 candidates were selected and notified November 12th, and the contract for the owner's representative is currently under negotiations. That is being handled with Harpst & Becker Law Firm through lawyer Todd Harpst, who works with us pretty regularly on construction projects as our attorney. Once the contract is negotiated, then the hope is to have the contract aboard for the meeting in December, but depending on how negotiations go, that could be moved to the one of the January board meetings. So the next topic for the Kenmore build is the CMR, or the Construction Manager at Risk. A construction manager at risk is a project delivery method where the construction manager agrees to complete a project within a guaranteed maximum price set early in the design phase. In this case, the budget that we had already set forth for the build of the new school. Combining aspects of construction management and general contracting, this approach allows the CMR to be actively involved in both pre-construction and construction phases. From the design stage, the CMR provides cost estimates, schedules, and constructability reviews to help keep the project within budget and on time. A GMP is established which caps costs, the GMP being the guaranteed maximum price. Caps the costs. If expenses exceed this amount, the CMR covers the overages, offering budget protection to the owner. So they are very highly motivated to stay within the budget that we set, because they foot the bill when they go over budget. Taking on more risk, the CMR manages subcontractors and controls cost, with any savings below the GMP often benefiting the owner as an incentive for cost efficiency. So if they do come in under budget, then we would see that savings, which could be from there what is determined as to where the money would go, if it goes into furthering the items or things for that school, or if it goes to other areas in the district. That's for a discussion at that point, if there are savings to be had. Having this open book approach where the CMR shares actual costs, bids, and potential savings, this helps fosters a collaborative environment with the owner, or us with APS. This model is often chosen for projects requiring strict cost control, early contractor involvement, and enhanced schedule management. We are on a very tight schedule for this project. We want to make sure that the building's up and ready as soon as humanly possible so we can get the kids into their new schools and start enjoying the advantages of a nice brand new facility for all the students. Timeline-wise, the RFQ is currently open for the CMR. The RFQ closes on December 2nd. December 2nd, so over the month of December, the value selection of the top 3 candidates is done. The criteria for the selection of the CMR is being developed by Harps and Becker Law Firm. So they're creating questions in the rubric, and those are based on feedback from our internal equity, as well as the previous process of going through the RFQ process for the architects on this project. Once the top 3 are selected and notified, then interviews of those top 3 will be performed, as well as requesting price proposals from those top 3. And then proposal review and selection will happen through the end of January into the beginning of February. And then potential, as long as everything stays on schedule, then the top selection, best value selection for CMR would come to board for approval, potentially in the last meeting in February.
Okay. Question, Ms.
Yes.
Hall?
Quick question. Before we go to the update on the facilities, what is the cost? Like, is there a dollar amount budget set to the side for the owner's representative and also for a CMR?
It's taken out of the overall budget for the construction of the
Okay,
building.
so the budget that you guys had told us about a while ago, how much is the overall budget for this?
$54 million
Okay, so
is what is
these
being-
two roles will come out of that 54 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Reverend Harris?
I want to stay with the budget for this project.
Okay.
The overall project, the build is $54 million.
The total project is 63 million, but that was the contract for the architectural firm is separate from that 54. So the 54 is what is given to the CMR
Okay.
for the actual construction of the new building. So that 9 million difference is the cost of the architectural contract, which we contracted with Prime AE and Triad architectural firms, and they're currently in the design phase of the building. That balance also includes the budget for the demolition of Miller South building and Pfeiffer building once construction is complete and students have moved in, as well as demolition of the Kenmore High School that is currently on site, and that site development involved in that process.
So
Yes.
I have a few questions, if I can.
Go ahead.
So our overall budget to demolish Kenmore, Pfeiffer, and
Miller
Miller
South.
South, and to build the Miller South is $63 million.
Correct.
How much money do we have for this project?
That is what it was. That was the budget that it was established. That specifically, I can't answer. That would need to come from Dr. Thompson or someone in the Treasury's office. How the budget was determined and how it was arranged, what would go to where and diced up, that was all prior to me becoming Director of Facilities. So I was not involved in that process.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that this presentation on this particular project be moved to the Finance Committee on this project. And my concern is we have a building project in the Equity Committee, and we're talking about building two buildings at the same time. I mean, we're talking one building here, but the actual overall budget for this project, before we start any building project, whether it's this building or North High School, we need to make sure that the money is actually there. Because if we were to go into, if we sign these contracts, and then we come to a place where we don't actually have funding, now we're in the middle of something, whether it's, we have an architect firm, we have owner representative, we have a construction manager. We are into these contracts, but we may not have enough money for the actual build. And what happens if we run out of money? Where does the rest of the money come from? So I would ask that these, I mean, I thank you for the presentation, but I think this is a finance issue.
Yeah, and I think he can go ahead and give us the presentation tonight, but yeah, it could be part of finance because it is dealing with finances. The overall project he can go ahead and give to us, but yeah, we could recommend that it go into Finance Committee because to me it's kind of dual committee, this committee here, but more finances as well. Okay, so we can make that recommendation. Questions? Okay, all right. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Keenan.
No worries. I guess before moving on to any of the other updates, are there any questions on what a CMR is or what they do or what the owner's rep is or what they do, or any questions on the Kenmore build itself? Any updates on that?
Dr. Molnar?
Sorry, I just came up with this. I hear the move to finance, and I'm curious. I know that there's a finance committee meeting tomorrow. I also know that there's a finance committee meeting December 16. I see on your timeline here that the contract is to be submitted to the board agenda December 9. Are you saying, Member Harrison, that we would, before we saw this contract, it would go to finance, so it would need to go to finance before December 9?
I'm not I know we have a lot to do in the Finance Committee tomorrow, so I'm not putting a timeline on it. I'm not necessarily looking at these timelines here as absolute timelines. The first thing for me is to make sure we have the money. And so these timelines can be moved, and I don't want to put something on the agenda without talking to the chair of the committee. I'm simply wondering, is it that we need to make sure that we have the money before we start to sign contracts? And so I wouldn't put a time on it. I don't know the time. I'm sure that the superintendent and so the treasurer, I'm sure that they have time frames in mind, but these times that's presented to us right now are estimated times. I would
Yes, and I will also talk to the chair of the Finance Committee as well, so that way she'll know what's going on, and Dr. Thompson.
Just a point of clarification, are these estimated times? Because I thought that in one of the meetings that we had to determine based off of some type of time period these contracts.
Correct.
Just can you clarify that for me, that these dates are
these
not
are not
subjective?
estimated dates.
Okay,
These are the dates in order for one to honor the RFQ process and the dates that are defined in the RFQ process. We have to stick to these timelines, or we have to essentially start over with any of those, as well as any delays that we have in these timelines. If we do, for unforeseen reasons, have to start over in any way, those further delay the project. So as say the CMR, if not selected, and it has to go through the process again, it could add potentially another 3 to 6 months to the overall timeline of the build.
It would just, okay, so just for clarification, it would extend the timeline.
Correct.
Okay, and then I also recall, because with a lot of questions had come about this, and so I understand, okay, yeah, the timeline will be delayed. But I remember also some mentioning of possible, no one can know this with certainty, that it also may impact the overall cost because of the way that cost of goods are changing with inflation and rates, that if it's delayed, I don't know if it's a certain time frame of which is delayed, but we could be looking at, instead of $63 million, that price could increase. And so that's why those timelines were being presented as they were.
Yes, any delay in any construction project has the potential to increase cost.
Although I do understand the point of Pastor Harrison about you don't want to start a thing, but I don't, Superintendent, I see you back there. Did you have anything to add to this as far as to add clarity maybe to Member Harrison's comment about the funds availability? Is there any insight you can give?
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
So I have a meeting on this Thursday with the attorneys that are the finance attorneys that are from Miller South and Pfeiffer to discuss just what your question is. So after that, I can probably give you more information, not on whether or not we have the money is there, but the process of us securing the funds so that we are able to do things that need to be done now. And as we go through this process, they are the ones that we have to go through. So we had a meeting last week, and we'll be having a meeting again this Thursday. Okay. And so in terms of your question, how much money, all of that was established before I got here. So once I got here, we're picking up the project, and Mr. Keenan came in after the process. So we will know in terms of more, I would have more certainty in terms of what we need to do in terms of securing those funds so that we can meet the deadlines that we have to meet. But the one thing that we have to be careful is we do have to be in that building within, all of this done, kids in the building within 3 years. So we don't have a lot of time for, any type of delays.
So we have to be in the building, thank you, Mr. Chair, we have to be in the building according to the COPS contract?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because we did, the COPS was done for this project.
Yes, so according to the COPS contract. Now, how much money do we have available that's designated to this project?
That's what we're going to talk about on Thursday. So that, the total thing was 63 million. But that's what we're talking about on Thursday in terms of the money allocations and funding for the different things that are going to have to be done with this building. So I'll have a little bit more of an idea on Thursday. But the money, of course, we got the money from the COPS. That's there. But we'll have to do things through them, through their finance attorneys.
Well, Mr. Chair, what my concern would be, I know we have the 40 million from the COPS.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have some additional money that was set aside for the build.
Yes.
My concern would be if we exhaust that money and the project has not yet been completed, now we're looking at where does that money come from to complete the project, because we are under a timeline.
Mm-hmm. And we have to stay within the budget that
and we
is
have
being
to stay
allocated.
within the budget that we're struggling with now. And we've passed a levy, and that levy was in part to build North High. The bond part of that levy was to build North High. So if we exceed 63 million with tearing down of the 3 buildings and building the 1 building, my concern is where does that money come from to complete?
So for the money for demolition, all of that was included within the overall amount for the high school, Miller South, and Pfeiffer.
Yes, sir.
Buildings.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Vice.
Member Harrison has me over here thinking now. So just for my own clarification's sake, the total project, tear down, build, everything, all in, all inclusive, like this, is 63 million, everything, right?
Yes.
As I understood you to say, sir, and I want to make sure I'm clear on my understanding, that we don't absorb any costs that's over 63 million because the CMR person assumes that you looking at, because I thought that's what I heard you say. That's why I wanted to get clarification.
The CMR only oversees the construction of the new building. And the budget that they are given is 54 million, and they are not to exceed that 54 million.
So that makes Member Harrison's point more relevant, because if I understood you, Pastor Harrison, you start talking about if the demolition goes over, if other things that necessarily were not in the build of the building go over, then where are we going to get that money from? Okay, thank you I think I'm clear. I'm clear now. Thank you.
Construction, period. Construction, and I'm sure Mr. Keenan, you could speak to this. There's so many uncertainties when you're talking about tearing down and building something. I mean, even down to the soil. We were going to do it this way, but we can't do it this way because of this. And that's my concern, is just the nature of construction across the board. If you're building a house, if you're building a doghouse, there potentially are cost overruns or unexpected things that happen.
Yes.
That was my concern.
Right. And it sounds like, well, it doesn't sound like we're going to have to stay within that budget, and we can't go over. So whether that's 63 million, better tear down those buildings, rebuild the buildings, and do everything within that period of time. So that's where I think we're getting here. All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Madam Hall.
Just a quick question. What is the actual timeline? I keep hearing us say it like timeline. This was approved last year, right? Now we're a year into now getting the company, getting the owner's representative and the CMR. How long was the time frame to get this together? Mr. Keenan looked right at you.
We are supposed to, it's a 3-year, we have to be in there within 3 years or less in the building. So I'm guesstimating, again, around 27, 28, that we would be in the school. That is the time frame that was sort of given when I got here.
Okay.
So,
So I guess that's the reason why I asked the question was.
and
if
I'm sorry, and the architects, the contractors are aware of that.
Okay, so they won't be changing their price from now, for like a few more months from now. So if we needed to take this to the finance committee, we have time versus approving it on December 9th, right? So this could go to the finance committee, and we'll have a little bit more time to look at all of this to
Yeah,
pass.
this was already approved. What we're bringing is the part of the contract, which is the CMR. That would be, but they're taking the money that was actually already allocated, and that's the budget that we're giving them.
Oh, okay, so then.
So we're not asking you to do another approval for another
So you're asking
53
approval for
million.
these two positions?
Right, but that's already built in the contract. You're
So
talking
then
about
if
the
it was
CM
already approved, why are you bringing it to the board?
The contract piece was already approved. Now you're doing the next step, which is your CMR. That has to be approved, but it has to go through the process.
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Chapman?
Member Alexander, I think too, when the build was approved by the board, we're gonna build
Right.
a school on that property, and financing was whatever it was. The process was then, there was an RFP issued for an architect. That took several months. There were some finalists selected and vetted, another month or so. I think the board approved the architect somewhere around spring
Yes.
of this year. The architect is engaging in community conversations, working with the staff at 2 schools to get their ideas and understanding of their needs. I know that will be coming to the board, Mr. Chair, at some point. I think the architect's plan.
25th. Not the plans, but they'll
Not the
be here
plan,
for
the
updates. Yes.
process.
Yes.
Now we're at another process with the owner's rep and the construction manager at risk, is my understanding. And when we brought this to the equity committee a month ago, there were questions about, we can't really contribute to the RFP because we don't understand what this is. And so that's how we got back to this at this particular committee.
Pastor Harris?
I would encourage the entire board to read the COPS contract. I think there's some relevant information in there that needs to be known to all the members. And as we go and move forward, approving vendors, whether it on this project, the overall project was approved, and many of us was not here. Some of the board members were, but acknowledging that people were not here. But I followed this process from beginning to end and I've read the contract. And when we look at time frames, when we look at when we have to do whatever we have to do, it's not cut in stone. It's not cut in stone. I think we make the best decision for this district. And starting and stopping construction is more expensive than to do it right the first time. And so, again, we are looking tomorrow to make sure that we are fiscally responsible with our budgets. And this could potentially interrupt what we plan for in a 5-year forecast. If we do not have, if this costs $67 million, where do we get $4 million from? And that's the question that I have. I think it's if we're going to take on a risk, and any building itself is a risk because it's construction. But I think that we need to make sure that we are in a position to handle or to deal with cost overruns.
Right. And you did mention the Finance Committee is going to meet. That may be something you can kind of throw in there a little bit because you guys are going to start talking about finances anyhow. Maybe that'd be a question that is brought up and say, hey, maybe we can start looking at this now versus waiting a couple weeks or a month or so down the road.
Yes, sir. Right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions for Superintendent? Okay. All right, Mr. Keenan, we'll let you finish up.
Thank you. Moving on to some other updates. The first is Booktool, the press box and concession stand project that's been talked about for a while. I know when I had first taken over as director, that was one of the primary topics right on. So the process has been and still moving forward. I had gone through and gotten a probable cost estimate for the project, which also now, through suggestions, included restrooms as to be part of the project, as there aren't any restrooms on the site other than bringing in porta-johns or allowing access to the building during events. So, I mean, it makes sense for restrooms to be in the stadium. So that was added to the probable cost estimate or to the request for that. So we have that to be able to budget. The current approximate cost for the project is $2 million, and we are at the process now of needing to do an RFQ for architectural services to begin the project in earnest. Everything we've done so far, we've been able to take care of in-house, other than requesting a local architectural firm to provide a probable cost estimate for the project. And that RFQ should be ready to be posted publicly within the next couple weeks. And that process would take about 30 days for the bid to close, and then it would be selection of the firms and awarding the architectural contract after that.
Pastor Harrison?
What is the time frame for completion of this?
Right now, the anticipated time frame is for construction to begin in late spring, early summer, and hopefully be able to complete the project by the time the first home game would start.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Chair. So you said approximate $2 million. And I see in here it states inclusion of students from the masonry project.
Yes.
So with that $2 million, I would assume that's material, labor, other things. Do we plan on paying the students, or is this something that they will be able to, or is this something that they'll be doing for free for their school to build, to help build?
This would be in collaboration with CCAA and being able to, my understanding is it would likely be a work-based experience for the students actively involved and actively in those courses, whether it's at Bookdale itself, the masonry program at Bookdale, or the construction program at Garfield. I mean, there can be many layers brought in for the project.
Collaboration, okay.
But that collaboration is just me working with CCAA and the teachers to figure out how that would work best.
Could we talk to the students and ask them their thoughts on maybe ideals of what they would like the press boxes to look like? I mean, it's really important to the students at Bookdale to say, hey, down the line, 40 years from now, tell my grandkids, I built this,
Yes.
you know? So to also ask the students, like, their thoughts. Like, does the press box have to look like every single press box
Right.
that we have, right? So to get the kids' feedback and also have them a part of it hands-on, I think that could be something big.
Yes.
And I think the kids will actually take honor and ownership of this press box to where nobody will come to their home and damage anything.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I did, part of the, my thought process for it is when engaging with the architectural firms that do put in RFQs, part of that RFQ would have statements of their basically requiring student involvement in some capacity in the design process as well, not just in the actual construction process. And that isn't uncommon for architectural firms to engage students in the process to get their ideas, as you're saying.
because that's
and be able to.
potential
So,
hiring jobs for these students, you know, going on their resume that they've done this, so that can open up many more doors, especially if they want to go into the labor union and things
Right.
like that. They wouldn't have to wait so long to be a journeyman, you know, because of their skills. So
it's certainly a portfolio builder and a resume builder.
Yeah.
Typically, in projects like this that I've been involved with in the past, they're not paid positions. They're just work-based experience, so they get that and they're able to help build their portfolio and to gain that experience, that hands-on experience.
yeah.
Questions?
That's why you ain't part of it.
All right. Are you done with the Bookdale piece?
Yes.
All right, any more questions on the Bookdale piece?
Was the lights included? With
No.
the piece? Oh, okay.
The probable cost estimate for lights is another $1.2 million.
Who was that for?
I'm sorry?
We can get into, yeah. So next, you're going to go into the lighting, correct? Update?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry, that was a separate one. So
Okay.
and this is for Bookdale as
Okay,
well. The
got it.
stadium lighting, though not included as part of the press box and restrooms project. It was a separate probable cost estimate, and that would be an additional $1.2 million to be able to add lighting to the stadium as well. But the neighborhoods, there hasn't been any community engagement in any of that for the stadium lighting. All I did was get the probable cost estimate to have kind of a number. And then if there was to be any further progress or thoughts towards that, that would be engaging many more people to be involved in that.
Pastor Harris?
I know a few years ago, this was a conversation. The stadium, and it did include lights, and I'm not sure, I wasn't part of those conversations, but I know that this was a community conversation. And at the time, it was Councilman Neil Delonte West and the
Athletic Director Joe Vassalotti.
yeah, so
and
it was
couple
a
others.
1040 caucus. But the lights and things were included in there. So I just want us to be mindful of community involvement in all communities when we're talking this, because they were involved previously.
Okay. That's all I have for the lighting. Anything further is to be determined, and that's in the will of many, many people that are involved as to how much further that goes at this time.
Okay. Any other questions on the Bookdale light stadium, restrooms, all that? And this has been a topic for a number of years. They did do some work over there. They did the bleachers. They did the scoreboard. But we wanted to have lights over there so we can have games over there in the evening, because we wanted to have some place on the west side where people can have the games and people can have an opportunity to have night games just like they do at other schools. All right, I'm going to stop and go with East.
All right, the update for East, earlier in the, late in the summer, there was an opportunity for a grant through Dick's Sporting Goods. The award was a matching award. If we still haven't gotten word if we have been awarded the grant, but it would have been a grant of $100,000 to go towards the completion of a major athletics project. So it was determined to go for the grant to be hopefully awarded to East CLC to make some major upgrades to their football field and stadium facility. That would include actually adding good seating on both sides of the stadium, updating the track to at least a paved surface. It wouldn't be able to get it to the point of being a synthetic rubberized surface. Make a lot of upgrades to the field itself. It would still maintain as a grass field, but be able to make improvements to it, as well as other improvements to the whole bowl for there, and further clearing the hill. We have been working as we can to clear that. And the grounds department has been working over the past couple of years to clear that hills and try to keep up with it as best as possible, as well as upgrading to fencing and other items throughout. So if we are awarded the grant, that would be $100,000 towards it, and the budget on our end would be $200,000. So a total of $300,000 to make a lot of much needed and major upgrades to the East football field and track area.
Pastor Harrison.
So just a recap for me. So Bookto is a yes. We're proceeding with Bookto.
Correct.
And the stadium lighting and East is to be determined.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
East is pending the award of the grant. If we do not receive the grant, then it would go into further discussion as to where or if the additional funding that we didn't receive would come from.
Board Member Hall.
Thank you. So I'm going to speak this in existence that we're going to win that grant, right? But one thing I do want us to take in consideration, especially you when you're doing like negotiation and all that stuff, is to having a track at East is big, where
Yes.
we can actually have kids run the track and compete. And I would just say, me personally, I would love for it to be a competitive track where we can actually have big track meets instead of just being at one school. And then also when doing the track and the updated bleachers, let's keep in mind that this still can be potentially a football stadium one day. You know, so, putting the track there is amazing, but I don't want us to get into the point where later on it's, well, Ms. Hall, we built the track and it's only this big and we can't put a football field.
Right.
I don't want to hear that in the future. You know, I want to make sure that when we do the track, that the kids can still play on the football field, still practice until we can get money to do an actual football field.
Right. So with that specific site, there already is an existing cinder track that is a full-size track and of the right dimensions that it could eventually become a competition track.
Right.
So making that upgrade won't affect the usability of the football field. That will still be maintained and usable as is and actually enhanced by that.
Okay, wonderful. And then will this track be a track at full width where we
It
can
would be
actually
the-
have tournaments?
It would be at the first step, like with Firestone, how it was asphalted first and was that way for many years before the synthetic rubber coating was added to the top to make it available for competition. So that would be the next step after that.
Well, I'm sorry, one thing. I thought Elliott was the only school that had the full-size track. Because I know when we had talked about Bookto, I was told it's not a full track to
Correct.
have meets. So will this be the appropriate side to actually have a meet where we can invite
It would
other
be of
schools?
competition size and would be able to become something where we could invite others as long as the seating and other arrangements meet the requirements through OHSAA.
Okay, thank you. I just don't want it to get lost.
Yeah.
That we could potentially have a football stadium there
Mm-hmm.
again. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hall, that's not going to happen overnight.
Well, no, I know.
So providing we can get this grant, the goal was to put the top on the track, which is about maybe 175,000. But that was before all of this other stuff came about too. So, and over time, we would evolve it into a full-fledged stadium where people, because the next thing you would have to do is you would have to, which is a problem right now, even at Bookdale, even though Bookdale, the way it was built, the track is not built for a competitive track, but you can still have football out there. But the problem is when they need to use restrooms, they have to go inside of the school because they don't have, so that's what we're trying to work on there. But East doesn't have anything, so over time, years, we would have to evolve this, which would give us a full-fledged track on that side of town, that our kids could and community could use. But right now, it isn't anything. And that hill, in talking with Mr. Keenan, that's going to be something we got to really deal with, the way it's kind of structured right now. But providing we can get this grant, then we can kind of start on our way and build out. Same thing with the lights at Bookdale. I was trying to get the press box and all that done, and budgetarily looked at the following year of us looking at the lights and kind of doing it because there's no way we can do it all at one time. But over time, getting us and at East where they could have, it will become evolved into, which might take us a couple of years, but, well, a few, I should say, not a couple, that's two. Just making sure we have that time. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that that was the goal, or is the goal, but it's just going to take some time.
Mr. Superintendent, thank you for that, and I think this is a great conversation to have in the Equity Committee, and it started when we started talking about Bookdale, and to Member Hall's point, Elliott did not become what it was at one time. We put lights in there, but 4 years before that, we put the electricity in there to put the lights in. So we looked at a master plan for certain schools, and that's what we are speaking of now when we're talking about a Bookdale, when we're talking about an East. Know that we can't do it all at one time, but we want a master plan, and we don't want to put something in that's going to prevent future growth. And that's what I heard. I don't want to step on her point, but that's what I heard.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a part of the facilities master, because even though we say facilities, but we're talking about our grounds, so that would be a part of that plan to map it out, so that in so many years we would have everything we need to make it a real full-fledged stadium where you could play ball and all those things.
No, we don't have like what we need to be great. But no, okay, I'm joking with that. But I wonder, when we talk about this master planning, and I'm just going to throw this out, not for you to discuss now facilities, but it almost seems that it would be in the best interest of Akron Public Schools and the city of Akron, as far as also with partnerships like YMCA, to think about collaboratively coming together for like some type of sports complex to where we can use multiple sources of funds, city funds, YMCA funds, APS funds. I'm just thinking bold goals. If it's rules and stuff y'all want to throw at me later, that's fine. But it just seems that collaboration will be most effective to maximize opportunity, resources to bring revenue to the city for AAU games, traveling teams when we're not in motion using those spaces. Also for out of school time, recreational spaces. I mean, I can envision so much when we think innovatively, and when you guys said master plan and future forecasting of what we can do, is that if we looked at it from that lens of how we can do a greater build with more hands and more pocketbooks, or that's probably not the right term, more money bags, whatever, that it can go a lot further and be a lot more impactful for the city. And just overall, when we talk about curbing the violence, what happens between the hours of 3 to 6 in our communities and things like that, that we can cover a lot of ground by coming together collectively and also, but, being wise on everyone's end budget because we're better together. So just to put that out there into the universe and into your minds of how the networking and collaborating can happen as we forecast future-wise, like how can we make this happen? Because I just think when my daughter played AAU and I would have to travel all over this great state, and I would go to places in the sticks or wherever, but it would be a whole building, and they had like different courts, like I'm gonna make this like 20 courts on one grounds. Like you can get lost. I need one of those little scooter things to get around, and it would be kids from all over the state with these things. And then they had arena football on one section, and then AAU teams over here. So I just think that would be great for the city and our district just to consider as we forecast. And I'm thank you.
And Madam
Mr.
Chair,
prior,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I was like, just to talk about, that's something we've been talking about for several years now, hoping to try to get a complex, but we haven't been able to get to the point where we can move forward on it, but we do need something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to share that prior to my arrival, you guys had already kind of looked at that, and we have the property. And we had applied for 2 grants, of which we did not get this past year. That would have, had we been able to get the grant, it would have allowed us to, because you're looking at about $20 to $22, $24 million to build the entire complex with everything that needs, all the bells and whistles that need to go with it. So,
And it was this, what you said, we like collaborative, like City of Akron, Akron Public Schools, YMCA, like collectively?
This was funding that came from the state.
That we just
and
applied for APS.
Right. And we had to do it independently.
Oh, okay. Thank you,
But we were not able to
Secure it.
get either one of the grants.
Okay, thank you for that update, because I
Yeah.
remembered the talks, but I just didn't know about action steps, what was the outcomes, and so thank you.
Yeah.
Some of it got put on the back burner because some of the other projects, but we still need to push forward with that. Reverend Harris, I'm sorry.
Brother Chair, I certainly would love to work with Member Jackson and kind of hash out a few things. I think that we have put this on the table before with as many CLCs that we have. My sons played AAU ball, and just for the school itself to have AAU tournaments in some of these buildings that we have, whether it's basketball, whether it's volleyball, whether it's wrestling tournaments. Partnerships have never really worked out for Akron Public Schools. It's worked out for other people, but I'm not sure it worked out so well for our kids and our buildings. I think that the design of the community learning centers was to use them for the community. And I would like to see, I know it can't happen overnight, but I would like to see us as a school district entertain holding tournaments to pay for not only athletics, but to pay for facilities. And I think we have to start looking at different areas of revenue and become self-sufficient. And we have more than enough buildings to do it. We have more than enough buildings to do this. A AAU tournament is $25 a person to get in. And so when you look at some of these suburban schools, I know they only have one school per city, a lot of them, so they have the whole sports complex. But I think we have to look at some of these different ways that we haven't really traditionally done to upkeep our facilities and to improve our facilities, but we have resources because we have all of these new community learning centers. Some of them have 3, some of them have 2, but we have enough gym, we have enough spaces to hold some of these tournaments. I would like us to take a look at that, and I think that would pay for itself many times over.
Member Hall?
I just say I totally agree with you, and I think that's what YSS is looking at, to be able to utilize some of our facilities, to be able to bring it in-house because it's our children. But to your, both of your comments, like my daughter played too, and I'm spending money at all these other places, these schools that may look worse than ours, and we're spending $25, $40 to get in. Imagine how we could get some of that money for our facilities. Like Pastor Harrison said, I mean, that's an amazing opportunity. And I know that there's people that have reached out to APS and they've all been denied just to have a tournament at schools. And that's us kind of messing ourselves up for growth when we can kind of capitalize on some of those funds too. So definitely if you could look into that, because this is basketball season now, and AAU, it starts in March, April. So that's a way that we can bring money in as well. We got the levy, other innovative ideas that we can do to make sure that we can sustain and not always, pulling levies and things like that. So thank you.
Okay. You have more, Mr. Keenan?
No, that is all.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to throw this out there as well. When we're talking about the east track and so forth, make sure those bleachers on the outside of that track, for one, so we don't have them try to look over the side and they can't see what's going on. The other part is seeing if we can leverage some more funds through some of these other organizations. I know Cleveland Browns have done something, maybe some other sports teams, some other corporations and businesses might throw in other monies as well to help us so we don't have to, foot the bill as much, but maybe look at some of those individuals as well. Okay. All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I want to thank board members for being here, thank staff, and thank the community for participating, and we hope everyone have a great evening. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.